Greetings. It is an honor for me to welcome Vivek Sharma to the Lessons in Leadership series. Born and educated in India, Vivek has had a stellar business career, including stints at Motorola, AMD, Alstom, the Piramal Group, and now currently he is chairman of Adare Pharma Solutions, as well as a partner at Fraser Healthcare Partners. Beyond all this, Vivek is also a philanthropist, and we'll talk a little bit about that during this show. Thank you, Vivek. Thank you for making the time to be here.
Thank you, Raj, for having me. Excited to be
Okay,
here.
perfect. And I wanted to start off. You and I have a very similar background. Uh, so when you say you grew up in India, you grew up in this particular town, etc., I can actually visualize uh, how your formative influences would have been, etc. But for the benefit of the viewers, could you talk a little bit about your childhood, your parents, and the influence that they have had in your business journey?
Good. Yes, so I grew up in a small town in northern India, a town called Agra that everybody knows by Taj Mahal, So I was
Right.
actually, I joke with people that I've been taking care of Taj Mahal so they can go and enjoy it, with their families. And as kids, we would just go, and it's about 4 or 5 kilometers. We would just go. Every time somebody would come, our job was to be the Taj Mahal guide and tour guide.
Yeah.
But yeah, I grew up in a very, I mean, today's term, if you look at a lower middle class family, my father worked for an insurance company. He had a struggled childhood because of family separation and a few other things. And, so I grew up with three brothers. Parents did the best they could to educate us. And, in India, the best education people perceive is the convent education, right? So they put us in the best school in India despite the financial challenges. So we were privileged that the parents really tried to do the best for us that we could. And we had a challenging lifestyle because and that time you don't think of these things today when you look back and say, oh my god, what you went through and how you used to live and what you did. But at that time it was fun because that's all we knew, right? So we didn't know anything different. But yeah, I mean, I think my parents spent half of their income in the kids education, so what is left for the rest of the things was very minimal. And we used to feel the pinch of it that there were times when you struggle for very basic things in life, but that was fun at that time. Also interesting is my mom, when she got married at a very early age.
Right.
I was born very young. She was only high school educated, so she did her college and masters actually when we were little kids. So I remember seeing my mom studying in the night or going to give her exam, and we would go with our dad to pick her up. And it was interesting, because we didn't understand
Right.
the difference, that why is she going, and maybe we thought that's normal for everybody.
Correct.
But because she got married at early age, because of challenges and all that, so that was pretty inspiring that despite having younger kids, she was able to do her college and study. And I remember that she would be doing maths and economics at home, and some of her friends or schoolmates or college mates who were much younger to her would come to her house to really help prepare as a group study and then do it. So as a kid, we saw some of those interesting things. So it was exciting to see. So that's how we grew up. Had some challenges in life, but fortunate that the parents actually sent us to the best possible school, and we navigated through that environment.
Very nice. And so that has probably, instilled in you the value of education right through your life, your lifelong learning through your life, and so on. You said your father was in insurance. Could you talk a little bit about whether was there any influence from your father in you choosing accounting and finance?
Yeah. So he was on the insurance side. So, from a very early childhood, I used to ask him, what does he do? How he does. Interestingly, his work was very close from where we would live. So every time we would go there, we would see the place where he would work. So, you are always influenced with your parents, and you see the place of work. There would be on weekends, there would be some sports activities. So we would go with him and meet some of his peers. One of the interesting things that my father did, he had invested in some public company stocks in India. So there were two or three very interesting companies that he invested in, and at home we used to get quarterly dividend, checks from those companies. which used to be very small amount, but it was something that used to come. And then at the end of the year, we would get an annual report from those companies. This was all pre-internet time. This was all
Right.
pre-electronic media. So it'd be a physical copy that would come, very well done hard copy, hardbound with pictures inside of the companies and their plans and the products. And these were large global organizations. So I remember the three companies that he had was Nestle, which is one of the largest
Right.
a product company, then GSK, GlaxoSmithKline, and then one was United Carbon. And it was very interesting from very early age. I would wait for those reports to come. I would read everything, even though I would not understand a lot of the things. But just it was even hard to understand the numbers because it used to be in millions of rupees and all of that. So I didn't even know what that number meant. But it was very fascinating to read how they would describe the products they made, what happened, the challenges they had in annual general report, right? So it was good. At the end, it would have the key management and their salaries and their ages. So it was fascinating to see how a CEO, how much money a CEO made at that time, how different
Right.
people made. So it's all fascinating. So I used to wait for those things and to read all those reports. And somewhere I think I became very fascinated with this whole world of being a CEO. What does a president means? What does a CEO means? What does the annual report means? What does the annual general meeting means? So that was, in my view, I think an event or actually some incidents that happened that really shaped my interest towards the world that I am in today. One incident I'll share with you is when I was very young. We used to get this annual general meeting invite to these public, the company meetings. So I influenced my father to send me as a nominee to one of the meetings for Nestle. So I went from Agra to Delhi, which is about 200 kilometers. It used to take about 4 hours by train. And when I reached there, I was only 15 or 16 years old. They did not allow me because I was under the age. And they said, no, no, you are a child. Your kids are not allowed. So I had to push them, request them. And then, somehow I managed to really get into the meeting. And so somehow this interest has been there from very early stage. And I think it started from these annual reports and the investment by my dad into these stocks.
Oh, that's a fascinating story, Vivek. In fact, one of the things that obviously your childhood, your and our parents did the very best that they could in terms of educating us and providing for opportunities. But when you look back in hindsight, you realize that the childhood we have had has had an enormous influence in terms of our resilience and perhaps grit and so on. And one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about is when you grew up in India, at least at the times that you and I grew up in, there was a lot of uncertainty, right? I mean, uh, uh, and so, do you think uh, this growing up in a very uncertain environment with uncertain circumstances, etc., help you navigate your professional career much better in terms of embracing ambiguity and resolving uncertainty, etc.? What would you say?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, I've gone through some interesting phase in my life where a lot of these challenges, not just in India, even when I first immigrated to US, right? What you had to go through as an early immigrant, right? All these experiences have really shaped as to who you are and what you become and how you really figure out a way to make an impact. So I'll tell you some instances. When I was very young, we were living in a rented place,
Right,
and the house we were living in was an older house. And I came from school one day and found out that the roof of the house fell,
right,
and my mom was standing there and we had no place to go. So how do you navigate that situation? It's hard to even imagine that if it happens to us here, what do you do? And today we have resources to think of going to a hotel or to going to other places, or there's infrastructure like in US. Okay, there are shelters and there are, we had nothing. I mean, that concept didn't exist. Forget about thinking of hotel. I mean, that whole concept
right,
didn't exist. But somehow we found one of our relative had a empty space, and then they allowed us to stay there. And we ended up staying there for about a year and a half in that place. I mean, the small flat they had, and paying them rent and all that. But that whole experience that this can happen to you, such uncertainty can come that you will have to navigate and figure out how will you even sleep tonight and where will you sleep, right? And having gone through some such experiences has been pretty interesting. So I think some of these early instances, how you take, how you learn from them. My belief is very simple, that everything that happens is an experience, and you need to learn from those experiences, right? That makes you wiser, that makes you, bolder, that makes you experience to really deal with those situations or similar situations. So yes, I think in things that have happened in our life, I started working at a very early age. At the age of 15, I was doing some part-time work, which is very unusual in Indian setup. Here, a lot of kids work right at early age, but I was doing it 15, and everybody in my friends and my relatives and all that, people were shocked to see what I was doing. I used to get 50 rupees, which in today's time is what, 70 cents a month
Right.
and all that. But that helped because what I was doing, I was working in a chartered accountant's office. Again, the finance knowledge and understanding. I was studying accounting in my 12th grade. This chartered accountant trusted me, that he gave me a job part-time working with him, and I learned a lot, and that allowed me to do much better things later on in my life. So some of these things, yeah, 50 rupees was something important. I needed that 50 rupees. But more important is the value that I got out of that experience, that I learned to deal with people, I learned to deal with problems, I learned practical experience, which is still helping me.
No, that is fascinating. One of the common themes, Vivek, I have done this with a few people now, but what fascinates me is most of the people that I've talked to, they knew what they wanted out of their life in their teens, and you're one of those. So you knew that you wanted to be a CEO. So you this Nestle's AGM, and then you have this internship or part-time job with a chartered accountant, and then you become a chartered accountant yourself. So let's fast forward to the US, and you start off your career, and you had a multiple organizational stints, if you will, in AMD, Alstom, Motorola, etc. So could you talk a little bit about your transition from India to the US, your focus on finance? But when I look at your life, you you seem to have been a master of multiple trades. So could you talk about all these things?
Sure. So I think, a few things. So I did my chart accounting in India, and again, due to that internship that I had, that 50 rupees a month job, that
Right.
helped me understand a lot of things, and I was able to do it much faster than what normally, kids take. And one of the things I realized, and I had a great job. I worked for a phenomenal company called ITC in India at a very young age. So it was a very good career at a very, very young age. But then what I realized is that, is this enough, or can I do something more? Somewhere, and this is still there in my mind and in my heart, there's always the desire that I think I can do better, and I should try to figure out what that better is. And in that, to fulfill that aspiration and in that search, I thought that age is on my side. I'm much younger than my peers. If I go and experiment and take a risk and then do some education, higher education, in US, that'll help me from a global perspective, whether I work in India, whether I work anywhere. Initially, the intent was that I will go and just do a CPA or something in US and come back. So I came here to do that, didn't realize that just doing CPA alone will not help. You need a lot more than that. I struggled for about 5 6 years. And when I say struggle, I mean it was a truly struggle, because the jobs that I got initially were very, very basic. Because just alone accounting degree and CPA doesn't really do a whole lot to you.
Right.
So even though I had a potential, I knew that I can do a lot more, but finding the right opportunity is always the challenge.
Correct.
So it took me 6 years. During this time, I did my CPA from here, and I got a job with a company called Motorola. Motorola was a very large company at that time, doing very well in multiple sectors. Of course, in telecommunication, they were the second largest company after Nokia. But more importantly, on semiconductor side, they were behind Intel, the number two company, and they had a very large presence in semiconductor. So I joined them, and that was the platform I was looking for. So I joined them. All the challenges and all the things that I've learned during my early stages and my doing my chart accounting days helped me, and I did very well there. I got promoted at a very early age. I got broad responsibility into multiple functions. Interestingly, I got rated as one of the top performers in the company, and then they decided to send me to my executive MBA. So Thunderbird was an international global school
Right.
there. I wanted to do MBA in international business, and then they sponsored it, and they said, "No, we like to invest in you." So I did my MBA with the help of Motorola at that time. Did very well with them. Everything was great. They decided to spin off the business that I was part of, and I didn't feel that I wanted to go with that business. So I took an opportunity with another company called Advanced Micro Devices in
Right.
Austin, Texas. AMD was a very interesting company. It's a Motorola was very structured, process driven, very well managed in the sense that it had everything was around processes, everything was structured, everything was there, and you have to go and execute what was planned. Whereas AMD was a very large startup. It was built by entrepreneurs, and it grew very fast. And the whole goal there was to really gain market share and create value for the consumers, and the computer chips environment was changing and evolving. So they were lacking processes significantly, because it just grew fast, so they just kept growing. So there was an opportunity to do different types of things. Interestingly, I got so much opportunity to do a lot of different things at AMD
Mm.
because of the background, because of the passion, energy I had, because of the desire to really grow and learn. All these things really combined, I was able to put my hand in multiple places at AMD. So at AMD, while I was a group controller focused on a lot of finance activities, I helped them in leading an effort on finance and supply chain restructuring. I worked on HR restructuring, and most importantly, Sarbanes-Oxley was there around that time. This was the first year of Sarbanes-Oxley, and unfortunately, AMD was not a very good performer in the first year of Sarbanes-Oxley because of lack of process and lack of controls. So we had to do a lot of work in year two, and the CEO was struggling. So I offered myself. I said, "Can I help you with this thing?" And reluctantly, they asked me to really help build a process and build an environment which will allow them to get better in Sarbanes-Oxley. So I hired a new team. We worked on a project. We did phenomenal things. Outcome is that we got rated as one of the best Sarbanes-Oxley performers, and
Wow.
somehow that that allowed my name to get listed in some magazine as the top 50 or top 100 finance people in 2006. So it gave me broader visibility. But the bottom line is, I was willing to take risk. I was willing to do things that nobody else wanted to do. I was willing to do more than what was asked from me, and I was willing to work on things that were complex and difficult but very important for the organization. Fortunately, they succeeded, and with that success came some recognition and some rewards that allowed me to really move out of those jobs, and then got into a private equity in Boston company called Thomas H. Lee Partners, who
Right.
was looking to create an operating group with people who are skilled in multiple skills that they can help their CEOs, and the leadership team of the portfolio companies get better. So that's how I ended up in a private equity world in Boston in 2000 and 6 and 7 time frame.
And that's a fascinating switch by itself, Vivek, because I've not seen a lot of people switch out from organizations and with focus on very specific finance discipline, etc., and moving to private equity and so on. So, how did that happen? And more importantly, what were your learnings in that stint?
Right. So, I mean, I didn't do much to happen except I focused on what I needed to do in the companies that I was in, right?
Right.
I delivered everything that was expected and even more. I did great work. I did things that nobody else wanted to do. I took risk in taking chances with, projects that were risky and complex. But, they succeeded. When they succeeded, I got recognized. I got into magazines and all that. And somehow some private equity in Boston who was looking to create a group, were looking for people like me, they found me. I was not looking for a job. I had not thought that I will get into private equity world. So it was a reward for a good work. Let me put it that way. It was not a thoughtful direction that I was thinking. I had aspirations to do better in my career, and I was very ambitious, but that was not the route I was thinking. But anyway, they found me. I came there. I was the first operating resource that they had hired. So it was very interesting to work in an environment with highly educated, highly very smart, very successful investment fund that is focusing on investment in multiple segments of industry. So it was a, till then I was just focused on one company, and within those companies, one function. Now you are like the whole world is open to you. You are working on a mattress company, you're working on world's largest music company, you're working on a radio company, you're working on a food processing company. You could be working on any type of company. What was interesting is what I realized that all the experience and everything that I have done was has become even more valuable. That now you can really use it in multiple different ways to create a bigger value and a bigger impact. Because the typical private equity model is to maximize the value during their investment hold period, which could be 3 to 5, 6 years. And there is an end game, which is to maximize the value for the shareholders, right? So now there's a stronger need for that knowledge and for that experience. So I found my whole approach that I've been taking in these companies to really succeed very, very relevant and very useful. And I applied that in multiple places, which made me very busy. I was involved in multiple transformation projects in these companies. I was one of the most sought after operating partners. I was asked to work on 1 year with one of the portfolio companies in a very, very large acquisition that they did. So I learned a lot, but I also think I created a lot of value by leveraging my knowledge, by really working hard and then thinking differently, I think, than how these companies were thinking. And then, creating shareholder value. So it was a big learning experience, big satisfaction experience that I was able to make impact in multiple organizations that I touch, and create value, which is the objective of these investments that these companies make.
Yeah. One thing about your career, Vivek, when I look at your professional career, I think in terms of three phases. One is the specialization in finance. The second phase is the private equity world. And then you become the leader, you become the CEO, etc. But the interesting thing that I want to point out to our audience is that one comment that you made, that it was not all planned, it was not all deliberate. You took out linearity, because if you think about it, people would have said, oh, finance, I want to be a vice president finance and then a CFO. And that's basically what it is. And you broke all sorts of rules in terms of linearity, etc. So how did this transition to CEO happen? Because you've been a phenomenally successful CEO. And obviously, the road till then had prepared you for that. But how did that shift happen? What made you think this is what I need to do? Because you are doing very well in the private equity world. So could you shed some light on how you made that decision?
Yeah, no, I think, listen, it's interesting. And, in some ways, I feel like blessed. A lot of these opportunities have come my way, and I've taken risk and I've tried to work on making them successful. But the opportunities have come. I mean, as I said, I was not looking to move to private equity. A recruiter called me and I said, well, it's worth taking a risk. The things I do is I take risk and then make that risk worth taking,
Right.
work on executing this. And I've done this multiple of times in my life. Leaving a job with ITC in India, coming to US with nothing, was a big risk. Leaving a job with Motorola to move to AMD was a risk because that was a more established company. This was a company that needed, had to leave AMD, to come to private equity, which is a totally new sector for me. And then, they are proving yourself. So somehow I become, and I think this goes back to your initial question about what has happened in your childhood. How have you grown and what are those experiences and what are those strengths that you have gained without you realizing that this is who you are, right? So I think some of those experiences from early childhood has allowed me to become who I am today, where you can put me anywhere, I'll figure out a way to navigate it and succeed. So same thing happened. I was doing very well in this private equity firm. I was a partner, managing director, very different lifestyle, making huge impact. Then I got connected to a India-based, a very global organization with multiple assets in different spaces, and they had sold a very large business. This is all public information in 2010 for about $4 billion. So they were, bigger than some private equities in today's world. And they were looking to expand diversify their business to US as well. So they reached out, through a common friend. I connected with them, and I felt like it was exciting. What was exciting was that I felt like they had very multiple businesses in multiple different sectors, and all of them could do better. So before I joined them, I actually traveled to meet the leadership team and meet the operations and all that. And everywhere I went, I saw a huge opportunity to create value, and that got me very excited. So I left a private equity job, which everybody, all my friends said, that's not the right thing to do. You should never do that because
Right.
people try to reach there. And, I had something at a younger age and I left. And then I joined this group, still lived in Boston. And there also the role was, this is another important thing, that the role when I joined was not clear. The intent was there that you will create value, but how you will create value in a leadership role, in a meaningful role, that was absolutely not clear. So after visiting few of these businesses, I made a very small presentation to the chairman of that group and said, this business, there was a business that I ran for, this business should do this, and if it does this, it will make this type of value creation, which was significantly higher than what the business was doing. So, and this is how the PE guys think. So I was trained in that environment and he got very excited. He said, do you really think this is possible? I said, yeah, I think this is possible. It needs effort, but it is possible. Then he said, why don't you go and run that business? And just like that, he gave me an opportunity. That business was looking for a CEO, so they did not have a CEO. So I now suddenly became a CEO of a US FDA approved drug product manufacturing company with operations in US and India. I had no experience in running a business myself. I've been an advisor, I've been a private equity operating partner, I have been a finance leader, right? But running business needs slightly different skill set. So I had to work very hard, very hard, and learn a lot of things. What I was good at, which was helpful, I was good at managing relationship. I was good at people management. I was good at general leadership. But now it comes, the entire responsibility of the company is on you. So it was an interesting journey. I mean, the start of the journey, but we worked very hard. We learned a lot of things. We figured out ways, and it was an amazing story of what happened to that business in a very short period of time. That we actually not only beat the numbers that I proposed to the chairman, but we beat them significantly. And this was a plant that I think there was initial plan that we should relocate it from there to a different place, and today that's one of the world's largest plant in that space. So it's very interesting, that by working hard, by doing things differently, working with people, you can accomplish a lot, and that's how it all started to get into that business.
No, that's fantastic. So one of the things I wanted to ask you following up on this is, you have very specific experiences in certain companies, AMD and Motorola in the semiconductor business, etc. And then you go into private equity, which exposed you to a variety of companies. Then you come in, become CEO. And by all records, your stints in these various companies have been unqualified successes, right? So how do you approach the first 100 days? Because you, by your own account, you don't know too much about the
Yep.
domain of the company, but you have vast experiences in the breadth of talent management, if you will. So how do you meld the two together? How do you marry the two together? Tell me, go into your mind and say, how did you approach the first 100 days?
Yeah, no, I think it's very interesting. So a few things I do, and I've done this like four times. This is my fourth CEO job right now. And what my realization is, as a leader, I have few things to do. One is I got to instill confidence in people that I am their boss. But more important, their boss is that I'm the right leader for them. So it's not just for the investor. I think it's important for the employees to believe that I am there to watch their interest. I have a very simple philosophy in managing business, that I have to keep three key stakeholders happy. And I will only be successful, all three of them will win. And that is the investors, customers, and the employees. And I judge myself on the success of all three of them. If one of them is not successful, I don't think I have done my job, in the right way. So in that context, the employees of the companies are a very important part. So one of the things I do in all companies is go and talk to all of them, not just few of them, but all of them. And I've done this number of times where every time I go become a CEO, I start doing town halls. I visit these plants, I meet people, I hear them, and I give them a simple message that we are here to make them successful. We are here to make our customers successful, and we are here to make our investors successful. And the only way this will work when we all work together. And if we all work together, we'll find ways to succeed. So that's one very important thing, to communicate to employees, give them confidence, demonstrate who you are, what you are there for. Second thing, I always talk about some principles on which the business will be run, you know. And this is something I've learned through my experience, that, you know, people know the direction. It's very important that the team knows where are we going. And a lot of times you see in companies where people have very short term objectives without any long term vision as to why are we trying to do what we are trying to do. So I always really try to work and then give people a long-term vision of why we are doing what we are doing and how everybody will work together and how we will accomplish the long-term goals. So in that aspect, I have some values on which I based my leadership style. So I always talk about customer first everywhere I go, and I seriously believe that any company that focuses on customer and that do the right thing will eventually succeed, and, you know, will do better than those companies who don't focus on customer. So I always talk about customer first. I talk about integrity. I talk about accountability. I talk about teamwork and execution. These are 4 or 5 messages that are consistent. I go and talk to people that this is who I am. Third thing, I start doing it very clearly and very openly, is I have a very open communication. So I write to people, I do town halls, I call people, and I don't act as their boss, I act as their peer. I always say we are all part of the same team. This is a team sport. This is about us winning, not me winning. And I only succeed when they succeed, you know. So I have a selfish interest in making everybody successful. And some of these things, Raj, you know, you'll be surprised, you know, people start to understand, and then people start to change. I mean, my experience in the 4 companies I've run, and these are global organizations, they had leaders before, they were doing okay, you know, has that people find this refreshing. People find this you know, different than what has been happening. And you see the mindset change, you see people rallying with you, people really focusing. One of the things that leaders sometimes ignore to do is share issues with the people, teams with the people, you know, challenges with the teams. I'm very open, very transparent. When problems happen in companies, I make sure employees know that there's a problem going on, because the solution is going to come from them. And I've seen it number of times. You know, when we start telling people, especially in the very first one that you're talking about, a lot of the employees said, "We didn't know that this was the problem," or "We didn't know that," or "I think this can be fixed that way. Have you thought of that?" Right? So I think some of these formulas that have been successful for me and that I have seen worked in the past, I apply them and they seem to work. But it all needs a sincere commitment from me. It needs a lot of hard work, and it needs transparent communication, and a vision that people can follow and understand, open, you know, open dialogue. And that's the model that I use, you know, work with people. One of the interesting things I've realized, that all these companies that I have run, there were a lot of good talent in those companies.
Hmm.
I did not have to go and turn around and bring a lot of outside talent. The internal talent was repurposed and reused in a better way. And they succeeded doing things very differently and make significant contributions, because of the leadership style, because of how they were involved, because of how they were communicated with, because of how they were trusted. All these things really made difference. So I was able to reuse a lot of the existing leadership in a lot of these companies. And then, you know, because subject matter expertise came from them, it did not come from me. I did not know that business, they knew it. So the question is, how do you use them more effectively? And somehow I've been able to do that, and that has helped me a lot.
You know, it's fascinating, Vivek. You actually talk a lot like Phil Jackson. Phil Jackson, in one of the interviews with the Chicago Bulls, he said, I learned early on that I was not going to focus on the X's and O's. The players know it, assistant coaches are there. My job is to manage the talent and harness their potential. And
Exactly. I mean, I always said I only have one job, is to make my people successful. That's the only job I have, you know. I can only be successful if the people below me succeed. One other interesting thing, and, you know, as a professor, as a dean of business school, you will realize I have a belief that most people underestimate their own ability. Sometimes they need somebody else to tell them that they can do better, that they are good, and then they can really take a bigger challenge. And I think with the right support, right guidance, people can really overshoot. They can really, you know, beat their own expectations. And I think as a leader, if you can just really do that, you know, you will see tremendous outcome, you know. And I get very excited when I see the person who did not believe in himself and now he's doing or she is doing something great. That excites me. And, you know, I take that as a challenge. I said, without telling them, I always say, well, I need to make this person better. And, you know, and I want him to say that he's better today than he was, you know, before. So human potential is, I think, unlimited. And I think as a leader, our job is to really get that potential out there.
Yeah, that is very, very wise advice, Vivek, to harness the human potential and to help them accomplish their potential is the job of a leader. That's a profound insight. So I'm gonna drill down on that because your relationship centricity comes through across all your jobs. You know, the fact that you're saying I need to be customer first, but I also need to be employee centric and investor centric, etc. To me, it speaks to a relationship orientation that you've gotten in your DNA, if you will. And you told me a fascinating story once about a conversation that you had with a divestiture that you had to have with a company of yours, and that was all very relationship based, and you actually conducted all the negotiations, etc., with this broader relationship in mind. Could you share some insight on how you went about it?
Sure, sure. So I think one general comment I'll make. So my personal belief is that as a leader, I'm acting as a trustee. A lot of people put trust in me when they put me in that position.
Right.
So when I made a CEO of a company, the investors are putting their entire trust in me. Customers are putting their trust in me that I or my people in my company will get their products delivered. Especially in pharma, people put so much resources at developing these products, and our responsibility is to get them the right product at the right time, right? Employees put their trust in me that I, as a leader, will help the company navigate in the right way so that they realize their own potential. They get their salary, they get their bonuses, they get their incentives. But more importantly, they realize and there's an opportunity for them as their career because their families survive on these jobs. So I always judge myself, as a trustee of all these people, and I always make decisions that am I doing the right thing as a trustee, balancing that. So in that context, this is, a few years ago, we were looking at divesting a business, which was a large business, has done very, very well. And it was in a sector that was very much in demand. So there was a huge demand from that sector and a huge investment opportunity for private equities and other investors to invest in. We had to do that in a very short time to meet some other needs. So we worked independently to line up some very known investors who were investing in that sector, and we got a very good feedback. We got very good offers that were really looking good, and it felt very good that we were able to do all of that and get the kind of value. Somehow in my mind, I thought that there can be a better option out there. There can be a better opportunity out there, or there can be a better valuation, because I could see the companies that were doing well. I also knew that the asset that I was running, the company I was running, had a potential to create a bigger value for a different type of organization. So I reached out proactively to few people on my own. These are public companies. So I reached out to them and then talked to see if they would be interested in meeting me. One of them, um, you know, decided to meet, and then I went to Europe to meet him. I had to take a very early meeting. The only time we could meet was at 6:30 a.m. in
Wow.
November. So it was very early, dark. Even the restaurants were not open. So the restaurant where my secretary booked the place was actually shut down. So we had to find a coffee place next door. And what I did is, while I had these three or four offers from very good investors, in my desire to maximize the value and to do the right thing for the investors and the customers, I went on this journey to explore if there's somebody else who would be willing to really talk. I made an investment thesis, which I shared with this prospective buyer, saying how this asset will actually create a lot of value for their entity. Then they got very excited, and then they said, "Yeah, it's worth looking." And then they started doing their diligence, and very soon they realized that they can make significant value. So they ended up buying that asset from us in a very short period of time at a significantly higher price than what we were getting from the other investors. So a very fulfilling experience, that proactive thinking, taking some risk, trying out, even though you had an option, but let's try something different. Can it really generate value? Really paid off. What was more important is the way we approached it. We did it so that we can justify to other why this will make sense. So it was a win-win situation. That company did benefit significantly from the acquisition. Our investors benefited. Our customers benefited because now they had a more end-to-end solution, so they don't have to deal with two different suppliers. They can work with one large supplier. And the employees benefited, actually, except for me. All the employees went with the transaction, so they had a job, at least at that time, and a career path with a bigger company. So it was a unique situation. It was something proactively I looked to work on, and then ultimately succeeded.
Oh, that's terrific, Vivek. One question I wanted to ask you, and I'm looking at the back of the wall, and you have, you said to me, drawings by your then young daughter and so on. You're a family man. I know that you're very attached to your two children, but you are a global leader. You've had to travel like crazy. So, how did you balance that work life, balance, if you will? What advice would you give for people who are starting off in their careers about how to navigate that work life balance?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's challenging, and these are all sacrifices we all have to make, right, to accomplish certain things in life. So, yeah, my family actually was very supportive. The jobs roles became very demanding. I was also very driven, so I also like to travel because that allowed me to execute and make the impact faster. And I traveled a lot, actually, a lot in the last 10 years. I would go to India for just a day's meeting.
Wow.
I've been to India, 3 times in a month, things like that. I've been to four different countries in 1 month. So, I mean, I've done a lot of these things because that was the need for the time, that was the need of the customer,
Right.
that was the need, for the business. So, I mean, you have to find the right ways. What I used to do is I would make sure that it doesn't matter where I am, I'm talking to my family every day, and I'm talking to my kids every day. And it doesn't matter. So sometimes I would catch them in the morning before they would go to school, or sometimes I had to catch them in the evening, depending on the geography I'm in or the meetings I'm in, right? But I'd never missed calling them. Secondly, that whatever time I had, whenever I was back in Boston, my daughter was young and she would go to a school here. So I had a rule that if I am in Boston, I will go drop her and pick her up.
Wow.
Otherwise, my wife will go and do that. So if I am in Boston, it doesn't matter. Even though I would have landed at 3 a.m. in the morning, or even though I came in, whatever, midnight last night, I would go drop her and pick her up. And sometimes even I'm on a conference call going to drop her, pick her up, but still I wanted to make sure that I go and do that. So you try to do the best you can and try to spend as much time, and then figure out how you will balance it. It is tough, it is challenging, but sometimes you have to make these sacrifices for the bigger gains of for everyone. That's how I justify it. And I think family support is very important. I mean, they were very supportive, they sacrificed a lot, but it all worked out. It all worked out. They do complain, they still complain, but they're also happy about some of the things that they have in life. So
Yeah. No, actually, one of my staff members who saw the wall behind you, where you had, was she what, 6 or 7 or 8 when she do?
yeah.
Yeah, and then the fact that you still have those on that wall, etc., is very endearing. So you've done. It is phenomenal, Vivek. I want to switch to one other thing about your career. You worked in the U.S., you worked in India, and if I remember reading your resume correctly, you also did a year-long stint in Switzerland, correct?
Yes, that's right.
So, uh, obviously, as somebody from India, I understand the value of cultural agility. To all those students and young professionals, what would your advice be if they are confronted with a choice of going elsewhere to another country for a stint, for a professional experience, etc.? What would you say to them? How did it benefit you?
Yeah, I think it benefited a lot. I mean, I left India even though I had a good job at a very, very young age. I left because I wanted to grow and learn and had a bigger goal in life,
Right.
And some of these early stage sacrifices were important to accomplish the long-term vision. So I think few general advices I would tell people. One is you need to know where your journey is going. Destination, I always call it set your GPS. And while we set our GPS on every trip that we make, it's important to set the GPS in life, because we can keep going, but if we don't know the destination, that journey is not going to be, that exciting. So I had a long term goal, and I thought that having international experience will allow me to run global companies and international companies without knowing which company and what sector and what. And it all helped. Today, I can talk to anywhere in the world, and I have experience in doing something in that country or being there,
Right.
so the intent was, that yes, I will go and visit, work internationally if there's an opportunity. One other thing I did is, as part of my MBA, we had to learn a foreign language. This was a Thunderbird, and I learned Mandarin for 2 years. And at
Wow.
that time, China was very,
Great.
upcoming, and there was a desire with the Motorola, because Motorola was very large in China, that we would move to China for a few years. So I was very keen to do that. That didn't happen, but I ended up traveling a lot to China for work. So learn as much as you can. I know, if you are a student and if you are about to graduate, take as much risk as you can right now, because they will all be very, very helpful. Working in other countries, in my view, I think in this global economy, in this world of, the global world, is going to be very, very helpful. The more you know about the culture, the people,
Great.
how to navigate the system, it helps a lot. And the last thing I tell people is that, listen, at the end of the day, work on a win-win situation. Whether you're working in Switzerland, whether you're working in China, whether you're working in Boston or Arizona or India, at the end of the day, everybody wants to win and everybody wants to succeed, right? So as a leader, or as a future leader, as a manager, if you can figure out solutions that allow them to win and you to win, you will always be successful. And one of the theories that I always have is, before I ask anything from anyone, I always think, what is it for them and why should they give it to me? So I think of the others first, and it improves my chances of getting what I want bet significantly, because I'm trying to make him a winner, the other person a winner, right? So I think that way. So my recommendation is, while you work hard, think big. And, if you have an opportunity to take a global experience, please do it, because it's going to differentiate you from a lot of people. It's going to make you wiser. It's going to give you amazing learning that will be very, very helpful for your long term career.
Got it. So again, we've talked about your professional experiences. You have accomplished everything that one could imagine in terms of professional successes. So, as you are setting your GPS for the next 10 years, Vivek, what is the direction? What are you looking at into the future?
So I think, Raj, I mean, so I may have accomplished, but I have bigger goals for the next 10 years,
Okay.
right?
Yes.
Because the GPS has been extended and has been set to a different, not a different direction, but a little bit of a further direction. So, you know, um, my 10 years, next 10 years, what I want to do is to measure my success in terms of the impact I make in people's life. That's what I'm working for, and that's something very important, very passionate about, very relevant for what I do. So, I've been involved in a lot of philanthropy activities from a very early age, because I feel like, we are blessed to be where we are.
Right.
I am blessed in a way that I was able to accomplish a lot of things. I don't know how many people's effort, energies, resources have been there to help me, which I don't even know, right?
Right.
So I have an obligation towards the society that, I should do the same for others and people who can need. And I'm in a position where I can help in a lot of different ways. So my goals are very ambitious, but they're not in terms of the bank balance I will have, and
Got
they're
it.
in terms of the number of lives I will impact in a meaningful way. So few things I am doing, which is I want to measure my success in terms of the generational impact I will make, or my efforts will make. So we've created a foundation. Through that foundation, we are working on some large projects, and all the projects are moving in a direction where it's not about just this generation. The work you do should also impact the next generation. So we are working on educating women in underdeveloped countries, or in poor settings, so that when a woman is educated and
Right.
self-employed, the next generation kids will have a better impact. We're working on educating and helping some physically disabled people get education and get employment, so that they get better results out of that in the next generation, right? So I'm looking at a non-environmental project. We're working on some very unique things where the farmers and the people who are planting the fruits and all of that have an income, plus they help the society in a way that the society has a potential to get better food and all that. So multiple projects like this that we are working on, which allows to measure the impact from a generational impact perspective. So that's the exciting part of my life now, and that's what I'm motivated about. So I have to work even harder to accomplish the goals that I've set for the next 10 years.
Thank you, Vivek, for that insightful answer about a purpose driven life. Because one of the things that I tell our students is that while you have to focus on your professional successes because they enable you your personal success, at the end of the day, it is also about the community around you. And so, thank you for making large scale impact as a mission for your life, etc. So, if I may drill down, because I want the audiences to understand the large scale project that you're doing in Uttarakhand. Could you share more insights on what you're doing there so that people understand the scale of what the Vivek and Vandana Sharma Foundation is trying to do?
No, yeah, thank you. So this is one of the initiatives that we have going. So in Uttarakhand, working with another organization called American India Foundation, we have, we are supporting 10,000 young girls. These are in the age group of 9 years to 11 years that we have started. There's a long-term commitment, and the commitment is to help them with education, health, and livelihood. So the commitment doesn't end just by sending them to school. Commitment actually is to really improve the quality of education that they have so they are prepared for better livelihood options. At the same time, helping them with their health and hygiene. What happens in these places, they don't have access to very basic health and hygiene facilities. They don't have awareness about a lot of the basic things that the girls should know. They get married at a very early age. They are not educated, so when they're not educated, they get married at a very early age. They start having kids at an early age, and the next generation, it also goes through the same cycle. So we're trying to break that pattern and trying to break that cycle. That can we educate these girls, can we improve their health and hygiene, can we educate them, and can we provide them livelihood options so they have a potential to earn, which gives them more respect in the family, which allows them more disposable income at their hand to to help their kids and them for to spend for themselves as well as for their kids for the next generation. And if the mother is educated, the more likelihood is that the next generation will be better educated, because of the mom's influence. And I've seen that in my own life with my mother, how she
Right.
went through and what it did for all of us, right? So this project is a long project, with sort of a long-term commitment to really see a big impact on this 10,000 girls population that we are really working very closely. It's just started this year, and we are partnering with the other organizations to help them get prepared for. Out of 10,000, there are girls who will be ready for competitive exams. There are girls who may want to go to medical school. I mean, there are girls who may want to do some skill building learning. So we're trying to partner with multiple organizations to see how we can bring all those skills and all those things to them so that they get to look at their potential and then have an ability to realize their own potential through these things. So we had a call with, just to give you the context of these discussions, we had a call with few of these beneficiaries just 2 weeks ago. And what we found out is that this one girl is in 10th grade and she wants to go to college. And so, what do you want to study in college? She said, well, I do want to study science, but the college that is in my neighborhood does not offer science. So why can't you study science? Well, I have to go 2 hours each way on a bus and come back. And family will not allow that because as a single girl, I cannot go there and come back. Said, okay. During COVID, the schools are, being not functioning well. So why can't you do online? Well, to study online, you need a device. But I said, everybody has a phone in India these days. He said, yeah, but we have one phone per family. I have two younger brothers and parents, and my time on the phone is only an hour. I don't get more than that, if even if I get that. And then the second problem is I don't have proper connectivity. I'm in a village and so remote that I don't have proper connectivity. So there is a desire there. There's a willing beneficiary. There's a willing student who wants to study, who wants to really do things, but the technology is not there, or the resources are not there to have multiple phones, or the resources are not there to really go to the school and live there or work from there. So it's challenging. I mean, it's challenging,
Right.
and that's the and what will happen is if there's no intervention, most likely this girl will get married in the next 2 3 years as soon as she turns 15 16 17, whatever the parents find, and then the whole cycle starts. And once you're married, then it's very hard to focus on any of these things,
Correct.
that relevant. So that's what we are trying to make an impact, and then see if we can break that pattern. We've taken a very large population of girls so that we have a good success rate. We're very passionate, we spend time also on these girls, understanding their needs and all that. Unfortunately, due to COVID, there's limitations. Otherwise, I would have wanted to personally go there, which I will, I think maybe this summer. But that's an initiative that we have started, and we're very excited about, the potential value creation opportunity there and the impact that we can make there.
Yeah, that's right. When you educate a girl or a woman, you educate the entire family, and it is fascinating. And I hope and pray, Vivek, that several of these young women find their way to Northeastern. That would be phenomenal.
My commitment to them is they can go to any school in the world as long as they qualify, and then they can get the admission on their own merits. Finance should not be a problem, So if they are capable, if they're willing,
No,
my hope is that they
that's
do come to the best schools in the country.
yeah, that's terrific, Vivek. So I want to again uh, focusing on your philanthropy. Uh, the Vivek and Vandana Sharma India Impact Initiative is going to get launched in a few weeks. It is to foster better India-US relationships and to foster better on-the-ground initiatives in India and for from an institutional capacity building point of view. So I wanted to ask you this: you uh, have not been a student at Northeastern. You are not a faculty at Northeastern. You are associated with the Center for Emerging Markets, the preeminent center that we run here out of here at Damore McKim. So, what prompted you to initiate this very generous gift to create the Vivek and Vandana Sharma India Impact Initiative? What does it mean to you?
No, I think it means a lot, Raj. And I think, listen, the decision was based on few things. Of course, I've been a little bit connected through these, initiatives, taught few classes and this, your Center for Emerging Market. But more importantly, it's where you can get the most impact of the time and resources you have. What are the criteria is that you can give money to a lot of people, you can spend time in a lot of places, but where is it needed most, and where is it valued most, and where you get the best return. I come back to my finance background, that my time is
That's right.
limited. Right? That's the only thing I control in the world, is my own time, right? Now how do I maximize the value of the time that I have, right, and the resources that I have? And what I felt in the program that we've created here, working with you and Ravi and the university, is that I think the potential to create value and make an impact is really, really huge. I think what you guys have done as a university is phenomenal. What you've done as a business school is phenomenal, and what you're doing in other countries is phenomenal. And the potential, I think, the progress you've made in the last 4 or 5 years, right? If we can replicate it for the
Right.
next 5 years and grow it, and hopefully some of these resources will help you take advantage of that and grow it exponentially. I think that's the exciting part. So I'm excited, that we have an opportunity to really make an impact and do some unique things, uh, which will be meaningful for me, that we were able to contribute in a small way. And again, it goes back to the next generational impact, and what
That's right.
university does is generational impact is for the next generation. And
That's
that's
right.
how I'm looking at this investment.
No, thank you, Vivek. Thank you for your generosity. So I'm going to end this conversation with one last question for you, and that question is your advice for our students. They are all obviously ambitious, smart, qualified. They have done their best to go out and get co-op experience or corporate residence experience. They are ready to go out and face the world. So, what would your advice be to them?
Yeah, I'll share what has worked for me. And I think if they can follow some of these things, I can guarantee them that they will have a success. I think the one thing is, people need to have a vision. I always tell people, think big. And I always tell, not have a vision, have a big vision, because you should not limit your own potential. Thinking doesn't cost money, but working on it is effort. But start with thinking big. And nobody knows their own potential till you really try it. As I said before, I believe that every single student's potential is much bigger than what they themselves think at this time. So you got to start with thinking big, work on it, work hard. nobody succeeds in life without working hard. Nobody does. You have to work hard,
Right.
right? So that's given. So you have to work hard, and work is smart. So you can keep doing the same thing and work hard, but you have to work smart, right? So that's important. Take risk in life. Without taking risk, it's going to be hard for you to navigate the world and then achieve the success. Life is about taking risk, believing in yourself. So don't take a stupid risk. Take risk that you believe you can execute. Had I not taken risk, I would be still doing what, maybe, was a good chartered accountant in India or something. But, I'm glad I took risk at multiple stages and they all work. You have to work hard to make them, to make them work. And create your own brand image. This is very, very important. People should trust you. People should, whatever you do, your integrity, your accountability cannot be damaged in a long-term career. And I can tell you, people who worked with me for 25 years ago, 30 years ago, you can still talk to them. You can talk to anybody who I have interacted with, anybody who I worked with, and people will have some common things to say. So you want to create your own brand image, because in today's world, what you do 20 years from now, people will be able to figure out what you did 20 years ago, when you were a student at Northeastern. So it's very important to build on your own brand, because that's the brand that people will invest in, whether they're giving you a job, whether they are giving you money to start business, whether they want to partner with in future. But that's the brand that people, and that brand has to have some key elements. One is integrity, accountability, trust, hard work, commitment. Some of these basic things that you need to see in a leader, you need to start working on them now. And I think if you do some of these things, I can assure you that you can literally do whatever you want to do in life. So potential is unlimited. It's all up to you how you work on it and get. But if you work on, well, as I said, some of these things that I have actually experienced, I think the potential is huge.
No, thank you. Thank you, Vivek. This was a fascinating conversation, an engrossing conversation. Uh, I'm so glad that you were so candid with your professional experiences as well as your personal journey, because there were some common elements that actually binds all these together: your resilience, your ability to embrace ambiguity, your relationship centricity, but more importantly, your ability to take chances, because chances, as you said, favor the prepared mind. So thank you. It was a very inspiring conversation, and I'm sure the entire community that is going to watch these videos are going to find them inspiring, and more importantly, more they're going to find them aspirational. So thank you for the time. Your humanity shone through during this entire conversation, Vivek, and for that we are deeply grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Raj. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it and look forward to more such conversations and working with you.